Oh, and I forgot to mention, Chief said he'll send me 10 elite.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Arena. We got homeboy Indes back with us. Was sick for 3 weeks. How you feeling?
Good 2.5 weeks. I'm getting there. Feeling a lot better than I was. Thanks for asking.
Good, good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot's happened in the past couple weeks. We were kind of just going, we were freestyling the last couple weeks, right? Freestyling, having some fun here in the chat. Um, Glad to see all of the normal people here. Really appreciate everyone joining us. So today we got a pretty cool episode. What we're going to talk about today is as we go into next season. Hopefully we get an announcement for next season. Hopefully today, tomorrow, maybe some balance updates. Hopefully, but yeah, we're going to talk about some of the key moves that we saw last season. Talk about them as we go into this new season, and then also talk about do we expect these moves to change going forward? Because there's a couple standout moves that you see, like basically everyone running really at the high end of the ladder, but also we're seeing people start running these moves more in the mid ladder as people start breeding them. So yeah, go into that, and then we also have a couple giveaways to do as well. So we will do the weekly Axie giveaway that we do, and then also we have a elite giveaway. So we're going to be giving away some elite tokens. So happy to announce that Elite is kind of officially a sponsor of the show, or I wouldn't say like a sponsor, but more of a partner of the show. And really happy for Elite to be part of it. Next week we will have a special event with Elite, and we'll be doing I think they call it like an after show, Elite after show. So that should be fun. Chief should be around with his shenanigans, and yeah, should be some fun. All right, well let's get into it. Indies, I'll let you pick the first move. What do you think? What do you think as we go into this next season? What do you
Oh,
think about kind of the current state of where we're seeing all these moves, and also, I mean, yeah, what's your first impression like going into this next season? What move stands out to you as the first move to talk about?
so I think a main one for me would be Piranha, just because it's so unique on the Aqua class to have a move that does 130 damage consistently. And then when you compare it to its two counterparts in Lamb and Risky Fish, which play similar roles, they both only have 110 damage. So for me, if just looking at it on base, it doesn't look like an extremely overpowered card. But when you compare it to the one similar to it, you can just see how strong it is in that particular role. And I think that's one move that we'll see either changed or continue to gain in popularity as we move into the next season.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's interesting that you bring Piranha up first because that's the one that stands out to me most. I mean, I've been playing a little bit off and on this past couple weeks during the off season, and one thing that I've noticed is Piranha really stands out as just, I mean, what is it, 130 damage, 10 shield or 20 shield?
20 shield as well, yeah.
Just yeah, you put that almost on any axie. It doesn't even have to be an aqua. I mean, it just surprises me the amount of damage it does, even on plants. Like it's just insane damage. I mean, I've gotten, I think what has happened on my bird that I used, it's gone through. So they use Piranha with double Nemo, and they just use like Nemo, Piranha, and that just in itself takes out my bird. It's just ridiculous. I'm like sitting here. All right, so he basically just took out my bird for free. Thanks.
Yeah, massive damage.
So one interaction with Piranha that a lot of people don't know is that so if you are below 50% health, it will target an injured Axie. Can you tell us why that's important?
Okay, so it's for two main reasons, to be honest. For one is post fight being quite a popular tail for birds. So you can use the piranha as long as you don't damage the axie that's in front of it, because if another axie is injured, it won't target the most injured. It only works if there's a full health axie and then one that's had damage taken away from it. So with post fight, obviously you lose 30% of your health every time you use it. So if your Axie is below 50%, as you just said, and you play a Piranha first, it procs as if it's a backdoor move, and it will target directly to that bird. And that's also very helpful when you're running backdoor builds. So I use it with a Shrimp Aqua and then also a Winghorn Aqua as well, where you can go for a partial kill, or if you know they're going to put up like a snail shell, something like that, you can go and injure that back axie. Make sure you don't target or do any damage to the one that's in front of it. And then once your axie goes below 50% health, normally you can do this with an aqua because you'll then attack first in the next round. You can use that piranha trigger and finish off the kill that you started in the round before.
Yeah, yeah, good point. And I've had a couple funny games where my piranha has triggered into like a post fight bird, and it's really funny when that happens because it's like it's a lot of times it's the last thing that people expect, especially when you're running against like an inexperienced player. So like I know if you were to run like a post fight bird or say AK, they're aware of that piranha trigger, so they're going to account for that. But there's a lot of people out there who don't really account for piranha, and then next thing you know it, they don't fully kill off the bird, or they don't fully kill off your aqua or whatever has piranha on it, and next thing you know, their bird is just done in like one piranha hit almost. Like as long as you can just get the trigger off, a lot of times on a post fight bird, it's just dead.
Yep. And I've had that same experience with Hungry Bird and Kingfisher as well. I've been using this bird that AK spent a while trying to breed. It's got Winghorn, Post Fight, Hungry Bird, Kingfisher. So it's essentially a triple backdoor bird because using the post fights, you can put your health beneath 50%, and then you can directly target a bug if you start with Hungry Bird, an aqua if you start with Kingfisher, or just go skip to the second target with your Winghorn as well. And that's another one that I think catches people off even more than Piranha because we rarely see those Kingfisher and Hungry Birds moves used at the top. And even if they are used, they rarely do get those triggers.
Yeah, yeah, it's super funny when that happens too because so yeah, you could go like post fight, Kingfisher, Hungry Bird, and I mean it's almost like a meme build, but with the state of the way we're seeing bugs and aquas, in theory, like I mean I know I haven't seen a lot of it, but in theory, like it could be good because you just post fight, you use something like maybe like a yam or I don't know, something to make sure that other axes damage, maybe like how you mentioned with the winghorn to get like some of a trigger, like a trigger for making the other axis damaged, and then next thing you know it, you're targeting basically whatever you want. So
Yeah.
okay, so that we got piranha. What are some okay? So we've seen piranha. What are the main things that you've seen combined with piranha, and do you think piranha will be in the same state it is next season?
Yeah, so it is mainly seen on aquas, but the thing about piranha is that you can use it on lots of different types of aquas because it's just got so much damage. It can take on the the role with an anemone tank. You can play it on a like a beefy midliner with a sponge, play it on a backline build, or just your standard Nemo damage aqua on any sort of build, and then the aforementioned shrimp backdoors as well. The damage just comes in so handy, and I think if the damage was to be knocked down to 120, we'd see more play of mouths like lamb on backline axes, and I've got one axie that I've bred that has cuckoo, lamb, blue moon, koi, and the thinking behind that is that you still have that damage move that's above 110 to play with the cuckoo. And then the lamb's just a bit more beefy for that 1v1, so you've got more chance of surviving a volley of offenses from another aqua or another bird. So I think there it will definitely be replaced by lamb on some builds. But in terms of backdoor, I think it's still the go-to move because if assuming it was to be knocked down to let's say 120 damage,
Mm-hmm.
because it's still going to be the highest damage mouth. So unless you sort of move around the parts, so like right now I use a shrimp, babylonia, piranha, goldfish. So unless you went with I don't know, another move that has a 50 shield, like a barb strike on your back, or I don't even know, maybe lamb mouth, clamshell, horn. So then you've got the beef across the two moves, and then you go with a higher damage back. I'm not really sure if there's any sort of real build that you'd want to go with another mouth over piranha on for the backdoor specifically.
So you're saying even if piranha was 120 damage, you would still use it over like a risky fish or like a lamb?
Yeah, so on backdoor, I'd definitely use it. On a backliner, I'd probably go for lamb. And then on midliner, I still use a risky fish. But to be honest, I think I like Risky Fish just for the ability to hold the attack plus. But I think Risky Fish followed up with by any other sort of 110 damage part will just do the same amount of damage as a Piranha would anyway with that 130 damage. So to be honest, Piranha might be as good in that role right now. If it gets knocked down to 120, I definitely think Risky Fish would be superior on the midline build.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. No, no, I agree with that. I'm not sure if Piranha would, if it was knocked down to 120 damage, if it would still stack up to some of the other moves. I think maybe depending on the team you're running, but I mean the obvious advantage that it has now is just the insane amount of damage that it's doing. And a few games come to mind. So like I was playing, I think yesterday and the day before against AK's team, and he runs this really nasty backline Aqua with a Cuckoo and a Piranha. And there was a couple games where I was playing against him, and I'm like, oh, I got this. There's no way he's gonna be able to kill my. I think I was running like a reptile or something in the back that was pretty beefy, and he just totally plows through it with this freaking. I think he was just Cuckoo, Piranha, some other crap. And within two moves, my I think my reptile was dead. And at that point in time, I told myself, dude, Piranha's freaking broken. Like, please, please fix this, because it really
Yeah,
it limits the Piranha itself limits what I can do when I'm team building. Like I have to account for, I have to either be on par with Piranha, or I have to at least take it into account. And so I expect it to be changed going into next season. It could be a world where it goes down to 120 damage, may even go down to 110 with some extra shield. We'll see if they change it or what they want to do. But I think it really cannot stay at 130 damage with the 20 shield and that effect. If it does, then it's just going to run rampant. You're just going to see more and more of it, and I think it even kind of trumps these discard bugs in a way. So
yeah, and I think that's a lot of the reason why it seems so overpowered when you run it with Cuckoo, especially because it brings out the high damage even more so.
yeah, because you like if you're scared of discard birds, you just go Piranha. A lot of times you're going to trigger either both snail shell and um, fish snack, depending on what all they're playing. If not, if they go for like an all-in shield play, I mean they do something crazy like double fish snack, snail shell, or just you sometimes you see those brick wall moves where they're going what 220 shield, 250 shield a turn. You can go Piranha Cuckoo into like another Piranha, or Piranha Cuckoo into something else, and you're going to deal damage either way. So um, very, very strong move. If it's not changed, I expect to see it a lot more next season as it gets more and more bred. One worry that I do have with Piranha, though, is if it is changed and if it's really, really freaking nerfed, then I think that there's going to be a lot of breeders that are going to be really unhappy because it's just being bred to the ground right now.
Yeah, and that's the always the thing with balance changes. It's probably changing things by a little bit is more in some cases, because just buffing or over nerfing is much worse, especially in a game where people's assets can be impacted by the value. But of course, people, if they have battle axes, they are aware that things are subject to change and values can change. So it's not the biggest deal, but definitely not great. Leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth to see a move go from being very strong to just really subpar against its other alternatives.
Right. Okay, I'll move into my next one that I saw last season that we can kind of give some comparison for, last season going into this next season. And one of my favorites right now is Gravelant. So, Gravelant is a very interesting move because we talked about it a lot previously on some of our previous shows. It's not a move where you can just plug and play. You really need the right build behind Gravelant to be successful. And I think people are figuring this out. They're figuring out some of these different types of builds that work. The main one that that off the top of my head is the discard bug with Gravelant, and this is in a really annoying build. But I don't expect Gravelant to change. I expect it to stay the same. I'll say that right now. However, I expect more people to start trying to breed into Gravelant. Yo, one of ones. Thanks for the sub, man. I appreciate that. What are your thoughts on Gravelant?
So yeah, I've always been sort of a fan of Gravelant, mainly because of the tournament aspect. It's such a strong thing to have in your arsenal for tournaments, just to completely shut down a backliner. And I think, as you said, not only will more people breed into Gravelant, but I think more people will start breeding into more ranged moves. We've seen it more recently with Blue Moon, where I've one on the Kaku Aquas, that's been something that I've been after for a while. Managed to finally pick one up and started breeding them, and that's why AK's got that Blue Moon one as well, because I lent him across one for the end of the season. And I think with ranged moves, there are lots of ranged moves that are equally as good as their other melee counterparts, and then just having that little extra way of getting around Gravelant would be so helpful to round out a lot of backliners. And I don't think Gravelant's such an issue that everybody has to run a range move, because at that point it would be considered overpowered. I just think it's something to take into consideration if we keep seeing all of these Terminator reptiles, which is the main reason why Gravelant started creeping back in, because the popularity of Terminator reptiles and bugs, and then Gravelant just being a complete flat-out hard counter to it, players started adopting Gravelant as the easiest way to counter that reptile or the bug.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I've been seeing a trend last season. People trying to experiment with it more builds. I've seen in the off season a lot more people trying to get Gravelant to work because, as you had mentioned, it totally shuts down a lot of builds, like a lot of builds that people are running, even a lot of backdoor Aqua builds, and people are actually specifically breeding Aquas to have some ranged moves to battle, Gravelant, because it's the worst feeling when, you're an Aqua, you have, a lot of times class advantage, everything else, and you just get Gravelanted, and there's like just this annoying bug sitting there with Gravelant or whatever, and you're just like, bro, like if you didn't have Gravelant, you're toast. So
Yeah.
I expect Gravelant to be experimented with it more. However, I do expect to see a lot of people failing in breeding Gravelant, and I don't expect it to. I don't expect it to be changed at all. I think it's in a good spot, and I like the mechanic itself because it's a very like all-in type of team build, and you have to. When it doesn't work, you look like an idiot, but when it does work, you're just like kind of thinking to yourself, free win. Like, oh yeah, Gravelant works, free win.
Yeah. And that's the thing, just with the base stats being so low, you have to make a build that's entirely centered around Gravelant. And I think a lot of the double discard bugs that have Gravelant at the moment, the ones with Snail Shell especially, I don't think they're rounded enough for people to play and have success with over a long period of time. I think a lot of the sort of success right now just comes down to people not really knowing how to approach discards the best, and then getting punished by that. And then also, if you can get to that 1v1 against a full melee backliner, of course, you're in a good stead. But you're really lacking a lot of damage on that build, so it's difficult to get to that 1v1. And the discards right now, I think, are just sort of carrying those builds, apart from the ones that have. I use one with Garish, but Sandal and Buzz also work in that spot, because then you've got a bit more damage and the bug's a bit more self-sufficient. You don't have to rely as much on whatever you're using in the second spot. I think Tri-Spike's reptiles work really well in that spot, just for the little extra bit of control. You don't necessarily have to have all the damage, because you can control the opponent in the early game and just try and force that 1v1. But it's also interesting to see whether that will make us see more birds next season, because I'm sure we'll come on to post fight at some point. And I think a lot of the reason why these Gravelant bugs are doing all right, even against the birds, is because by the time you get to the 1v1, they've weakened themselves so much with post fight that as long as you can survive one barrage, you can sometimes even win that 1v1. I mean, I've had it with my double discard Gravelant bug, where I just managed to keep their hand to 3. and they're so low that even if I only have 2 energy, I can just play 2 damage cards and have just enough damage to kill the opponent because I'll survive barely, sub 50 HP if they've only got 3 damage cards on them. And I think if birds move more towards builds like you run with the hare and the cuckoo, just something that's very self-sufficient. You can build a team around it. It slots into lots of different builds. I think the bugs will suffer a lot against that sort of axie.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason for that build with the hair cuckoo is it gets around a lot of different things, even beats Terminators a lot of the time. However, every build is going to have its weakness. I think that's the beauty of V1 is it's
Yeah.
you know just because it's good against some things doesn't mean it's good against everything. And like I had mentioned, there's been games where I think I have the advantage, and it's just like you get Cuckoo double Piranha, right? Like how I was explaining his AK, and now your build that you thought was a genius build looks like a total just dumpster fire. So yeah, but again, those are some things to look at. Really quick though, before we get into the rest of the list, I forgot I wanted to cover, and you're gonna hate me for this. I wanted to cover the Axie GG versus Lavox tournament. We don't have to
How
go
much do you worry
into
about that?
we don't have to go into every game, but I this kind of links into our discussion because there were some themes in that tournament that kind of link into this. And what brought that into mind is as I was watching the tournament last, or was it 2 days ago?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay, I saw this team had it included two bug yaks, double sandal, double fishknack, double pincer, double parasite. And I almost threw up. I literally almost
Yep.
threw up. So, that being said, what were your thoughts about the tournament? And what were some themes as it kind of links into this going into next season? Some things that we expect to stay around and some things that we expect to be changed. I really wanted to kind of cover this tournament because I think it was a good example of some of the meta that we're seeing.
Yeah. So with the matches, they were all very close matches, and as you said, they looked the teams, or at least the players that were playing, used teams that were quite similar to what they run in arena, or
Mm-hmm.
exactly what they run in arena. Some made little switch ups to just cover certain builds, like a Gravelant counter. I think that's what Wolf did. He swapped in a Shrimp Aqua instead of his normal Tri Spike so that he could knock out any discard bugs that would do really well against his all melee backliner. And yeah, we saw a lot of bugs, especially in that tournament. I think RC had one. MacBoy was the guy that was running the double discard, had those. And then I think there were a fair few Shrimp Aquas from memory. Um, and yeah, it was an interesting sort of matchup because all the players that played, it felt fairly similarly matched, and we got to see or highlight a lot of the depth to the gameplay. I mean, I managed to commentate for this one because, of course, I wasn't playing, so Chief and Axe invited me on, and I hope I did well enough to just sort of explain some of the complexities to the matchups. And I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting just to go over that because we've spoke about it a lot on this show in the past with people in arena, players in arena. There being sort of a level to it, people that think to a higher level, and I think that was really highlighted with certain players in that tournament, Palako especially, where he was able to overcome in one match, a not so great matchup because he played it really well. Opponent, could have played it better, but that was just one thing that was quite encouraging, that the meta was diverse and there was still that clear sort of skill being rewarded.
Yeah, it seemed like almost every match that I saw, there was a different team being used or a different lineup. I thought that was very healthy to see. There were some things that I saw where I was just like, oh, I wish the meta wasn't like this. But, each time there was someone who they went all in on a certain type of team. And we'll use the double bug yak team as an example. Um, okay, Apache had linked just the tournament. I wanted a clip of that double bug yak team because it was a pretty funny team. But when I see teams like that being used, I think to myself, well, if they would have scouted, if they would have known that could have been a potential strategy. I mean, I counter this discard meta almost. I think to myself, man, if you only had cattail on your tank,
Yeah,
you know, and if that tank had cattail, I know he had Yam. I think was it Yam on the tank or
yeah. I think it was Yam, and then the person playing the double discard just rammed all of their cards round two without having seen any Yams or pumpkins, which was an interesting play to say the least.
yeah. And in my mind, a lot of times the Yam when it's not even dealing that much damage right now. I think cattail is a better counter, to be honest, because the when you're running against that type of team, and who was the player playing against the double bug?
So I think it was played twice. The first one was against I'm not sure which order it was, but they played against Palaco. Palaco was running his he ran a bird with hair, like similar to your one, and a just a high damage beast with hair, and then a Yam tank. And then another match was played against Helium with his standard bunny setup. So that's an aqua that's not really an aqua that has lots of bug damage, and then a reptile that's not really a reptile because it's got lots of bug damage, and then a cute bunny tank as well.
Yeah, yeah. So what was it? Was Helium, right? It was Helium with the Cute Bunny team.
Yeah, that was the painful one.
Yeah. So yeah, I think to myself, yeah, if you're really scared of that matchup, you just go double or sorry, cattail, and then what happens is the cattail pretty much negates the discard in a way, and a lot of times the threat is just with the discard, for a lot of different types of teams. And so yeah, it's just a good example of how something seems so overpowered, but in my mind, I think, oh, well, I could have just used Cattail, and I probably would have had a good chance against that team if I would have just used a Cattail tank.
Yeah.
So, what were some other themes that you saw with that tournament? I mean, the crits weren't too out of control. There was a couple games where I had saw where it was really defined by crits. I think early on in the
Yeah, there was.
tournament.
I think there was one game. I think it was the decider of set one. Mappa can correct me, but yeah, Helium was in a good enough position. It wasn't the best matchup, but the early game went well for him. He caught a perch, sent it to his front tank that had shield on it, and then a piranha crit from an aqua, which was just enough to get the kill on his tank, and that was quite a swing. But on the whole, especially in comparison to the tournament the week before, where it was just crits galore, it
Mm-hmm.
definitely wasn't bad by any means. Probably one, maybe two games of the how many was it? 11, 12 that were played.
Yeah, I wasn't really counting how many games, but it seemed like a pretty long tournament. It almost went into the final round or whatever you want to call it. So
Set.
final set, yeah. What was your overall thoughts on the performance of the players? I mean, I know you're not going to bash your players, too much, but I thought overall, I thought that actually GG played well. There were some improvements to be made. For me, I think that where the improvements need to be made were um, team composition, and then also another standout performer for me as I was watching the tournament was Polacco. Really thought he played well in a lot of different types of situations. There was that really sick match where we all thought he had disconnected, and he just came back with that aqua for the really nail biter finish where I think the other opponent made a mistake.
Yeah, that was quite something. Yeah, I think just generally there were definitely mistakes made from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the clearest mistakes, to be honest. Like the plays that on the whole, you look at it and it's an all right play. There's just there was something that could have been done that was a lot better in that position. And yeah, definitely the team selection on the XGG side. I think part of that is not necessarily smaller team pools, but being very used to their arena team and not necessarily having many swap-ins that they're comfortable with, especially not to play in a tournament where there's you've got the pressure, you've got the nerves as well. So that's definitely something that was a learning experience for us. We say us for our players, and yeah, Levox, especially RC, picked teams well.
Mm-hmm.
Some matchups tried his best to not win the game, but still got it done in the end.
I don't know,
And yeah, it was a really fun tournament on the whole.
Mapache just said RC mastered the game. What are your thoughts on that? Is
I,
RC
if I
back?
speak, I'm in trouble.
Okay. Is okay. I'm not gonna even ask because you're gonna get me in trouble. You're gonna get yourself in trouble. I'll just say that Lavox, they played well. They were able to take the win. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. Is who was able to take the set, and Lavox got the job done. Congrats to them. Congrats to see that. And I'm gonna shots fired here. Glad to see they've won something because it's been a while, man. Just let's be real. It's been a while. So
But you say a while. I actually want to genuinely ask this question. Have Levox or a Levox player ever won a tournament?
well, they won the tournament yesterday.
No, but that was a scrim. I mean, like an actual tournament. Because
Scram,
from
come
memory, I can
on.
only remember second places, and this isn't even taking the piss. I was actually genuinely intrigued because I asked Chief and he didn't know.
I think RC he did really well back in the day, like the first few seasons. I really forget. I really forget if he's won like a major tournament. However, let's not forget though, RC is like the OG of tournaments. You weren't even around Indes back in the day when he was
The
setting up.
Infinity Cup.
Yeah, he was setting up tournaments behind the whole automated battle system, and he was creating like leagues before for the automated battle system. And I think a lot of it has to come down to like RC. I think his priorities are different now. He's obviously helping build up Lavox again. He's doing a lot of other stuff within the crypto community. RC is a very secretive person, so I don't know him and DeBoz. I always think they got some things up their sleeve and I'm sure they do, because they're always thinking of new things to do. And I'm sure in the next month or two we'll hear some big news coming out of them. But and you can see as well they're acquiring new good players. There's a lot of new Lavox players that I've seen that are doing really really well. That seem like pretty good players, and I was really happy to see. Again, it was a little bit of shots fired, but I was really happy to see Lavox, win something because it's been a long time, and we'll see how they fare. I really want to see like a progression where we're seeing Axie GG, we're seeing YGG, Lavox, and we can kind of create like this competitive environment, because I don't think it's healthy to see like a lot of this. I don't think it's healthy to see Axie GG winning everything, right? So yeah,
No,
congrats
I
to
don't
them.
really see a problem with it.
Well, I do.
Oh, dear. Yeah, but in all seriousness, yeah, it's definitely good to see growth within the competitive scene. And to touch into that, the actual tournament last week, the one where AxiGG came first, second, and third. I have to mention that. But the actual point I was going to make was that the MP gamers from South America, Bromp, Five Lectra, and I forget the name of it. There's another player as well. They all made it to, I think, at least the quarterfinals. I mean, maybe last 16 as well, and that was sort of consolidating upon their second finish in the most recent team tournament as well. And I think that's shows good sign that players just completely outside of any sort of guild that have been around for a while, because Levox, they have been around for a while, and it's good to see them resurge. But this is a completely brand new team full of brand new players as well. And it's great to see that they are able to compete and finish highly in these tournaments.
Yeah, and then I forgot one. CTG, they're on the rise. Watch out for them. And then Odin had mentioned Axie GG, YGG, CTG, and Lavox going to be a chunky four long term. So
That's the most Odin sentence I've ever heard.
Leaky. What do you mean Leaky? Where Leaky Games? Do you remember Leaky
Somebody
Games?
asked, yeah, that was just, I think, either disbanded or yeah, it must have disbanded the season that I came in. I think like season 3. I started at the end of season 4. So
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I got signed on to Leaky Games for a week, and then they disbanded. So yeah, shout out to Benjamin though. He's a great guy, and I think there's a lot of different endeavors he's pursuing. but Benjamin, he's been around the Axie community for a while. Really quick before we go on, some other key moments that came out to me in the tournament is, and this can kind of lead us to the next move, is Shrimp. Shrimp seems good.
Yep.
I think it's going to be the primary backdoor move used. So, what is your thoughts of Shrimp when you compare it to a other backdoor move like Smart Shot, Toothless Bite? Even we can throw Gerbil in there, but who cares about Gerbil?
Yeah. So I think just with Shrimp, it's of course it's on Aqua class, so good base stats off the bat. You've also got it being a tail move, which is quite relevant because tails, on the most part, don't tend to have the highest damage moves. That comes a lot in the horn and the mouth parts. So that's already a decent advantage over, let's say, a Toothless Bite, which has the same ability where it targets the furthest. It's also over like a Little Owl because Little Owls can be covered in team building. And at this point, most teams are built to be Little Owl covered. Then you've also got, or you mentioned the Winghorn. Winghorn's solid, but I think for the most part, being able to target the furthest Axie is almost more beneficial to most team builds, at least. Like I know Winghorn I use on one build with a Terminator Reptile, and that's mainly to knock out beasts. And then in the mid game, you might be able to knock out a backline bug. But you tend to want to have a Shrimp with any build, like a Terminator Bug, a beast at the back, just to knock out birds. Or if you're not knocking out a bird, you're leaving a reptile or a plant or even a bug alive for your beast to come through and kill. So I just think it's a very rounded move, and it being on a tail and the aqua part is really the key to it being probably the best backdoor move, I would say.
Yeah, just responding to chat here. They're making some good points. I think what we're starting to see is a really emphasis on like including a backdoor option into your team build. Everyone here mentioned like Tri-Spikes, Perch. We're seeing a lot more Perch Aquas. Winghorn. I'm really not a fan of Gerbil. I think it could potentially work, but it just seems messy to me.
These base stacks, just
yeah, it just seems messy to me. Even watermelon, turnip. Like I really think we're moving into a meta where we're going to see a lot of teams want at least one backdoor option. That's kind of an adjustment I've been making going into this next season. Is I'm really trying to get a turnip tank in the front.
Yeah.
So that way, if I do get backdoored, like say turn or round 1 or round 2, by say like a bird or something like that, then I have that option. With these post fight birds. So yeah, and as long like with Shrimp, I think it's kind of that main option for people where it really lines up, where it's really balanced on these aquas, where you can basically have a Shrimp aqua and you're not sacrificing too much. I think with some of these other builds, like for instance, like Perch, I think you sacrifice a lot when you want to run Perch, especially like if you're going like Perch, because you're really going to sacrifice on the speed and on the damage. And a lot of times Perch is just so easy to play around, and it's not as good as Tri-Spikes because Tri-Spikes, you see these Tri-Spikes built with the reptiles, which can basically kill these plants in a 4-move combo. These Perch builds, unless they have like Perch Piranha with like another high damage move, I don't think it kills into
Babylonia.
I don't think it kills into a plant. So it really is.
Yeah, you need to hit. I think it just barely kills a reptile, but as you said, like it's easy to play around. And the thing with Tri-Spikes is, it forces you to make actual adjustments to play around. You can't just cycle a passive move or just play one attack move to get around it. You have to put up enough shield, and yeah, I mean the control that the Tri-Spikes has as well just often leaves people to leave their tanks undefended, gets you a cheaper kill. That's something that we saw a bit. I touched on in that tournament yesterday, where that's something that could have been done better by the people that were playing Tri-Spikes. And yeah, just in comparison to Perch in general, Perch, it has good damage, but it's not quite got that longevity which a Tri-Spikes build has. And with it being on a reptile, you really get to see the value of Tri-Spikes in that mid to late game where players might be a bit more tight on energy. They need to have a certain Axie alive to go into the late game, so they're forced to overplay to account for that Tri-Spikes. And that's really where you see the value. And it also has a lot of mind game potential as well. And that's what you see with direct backdoors too, like the Shrimp, where you've got a lot of catching coming into play, or forcing your opponent to expend energy to cover it. Or if they don't expend the energy and cards to cover it, they then risk the Axie just completely dying. And that's why I think the direct backdoors, especially, rather than I call indirect, like the perch, little owl, things like that, where you don't necessarily guarantee that it's going to hit a target other than the front one. I think they're what we're going to see more. And to touch on what you said about turnip, after I got a turnip tank, I started building it into a lot of different teams, because it's the same with watering can, really. We've always spoken about how the tank should be there to round out a team. And so turnip, especially, you can put it into teams that suffer against birds. I mean, it sounds quite obvious, but it's such a massive, I'd say, improvement over a pumpkin, let's say, on a team like I've got one where I've got a Gravelant Aqua that really suffers against direct backdoors from birds. I've got a beast and then a plant. I mean, it's not great against double aquas either, but it's got enough to get through an aqua. So you slap a turnip up there, and then you're really rounded. And you give yourself a good shot in lots of matchups. And it's the same with watering can, where, you know, if you suffer against the aquas, you just slap that on. And it's definitely, I would say, a better alternative to pumpkin, and something I think we'll see crop up more as turnips bred more.
Yeah, no, I agree. With turnip, it's interesting because, like, as you mentioned, it's really there to round out a team, and that's why I've ran turnip, or trying to experiment with it, is because with my hair bird, the hair cuckoo bird, it's really weak against, you know, other birds that can backdoor, specifically like a little owl post fight or something like that, where basically it really punishes my bird, because if I use, like, say, one or two moves of my bird, I get backdoored. I mean, a lot of times I'll hit last stand, but I'll just get off, you know, the one move or one or two moves. It's just really there to, you know, round out the team. So, okay, really quick before we get into the next one. Oh, Indies, thank you for the sub.
It was a gifted one. Thank you to
Oh,
One
one
of
of
Ones
ones.
for
Yeah,
the gift.
yeah. Three gifted subs from 101s. Really appreciate that. Before we get into the next move, which will be Tri-Spikes, I want to talk about a giveaway. We're going to do a flash giveaway. And I'm going to test
Whoa.
out a new little giveaway system I have. So, everyone, type in the word shrimp like this. Type in shrimp
Oh, what is this?
for the giveaway.
Okay, I'm trying.
You can't join. What are you you got enough Axies. Let me see if I can put it on my display here, if it'll work. So that way people know I'm not cheating.
Wolf, you're not supposed to say Tri-Spikes. It's shrimp, mate. Oh, dear.
Let me see if I can
So
go
how
to my
does this work
display
then?
here.
Does it set up just like a random number generator, or
Yeah,
a wheel?
Hold on. It's not going to let me go to my display. But basically, what I'm going to do here is I'll give everyone like another minute. Okay, seems like people are done. Oh, Fusion got in the last. Let's roll. Keyword is going to be shrimp. Let's roll it. Hold on, it's not working. No.
That was really anticlimactic.
Hold on, guys. I'm trying to get this to work. Keyword was
Can't be
shrimp.
an Axie stream without a technical issue.
I know, right? Hold on, I might have to restart my or just refresh my thing here. Everyone's like wrecked. It's funny because I tested this with Ray with Ray V's. How do you pronounce his name? Ray V's?
VZ.
Ray
I don't know.
VZ. Yeah, last night because I was just testing it and it worked perfectly.
Oh dear.
Why do you not
Drawing
work?
not found.
Let's see.
Oh, there he's in chat. Talk to the devil.
Giveaways active.
No, Wolf. I would hope we're not giving away Mr. Gaxi. Mine are safe in my wallet for now.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna do instead. I'm gonna take a snapshot of or a screenshot of everyone that typed in shrimp, and then I'll do a name wheel later. But I'm gonna do another giveaway. So we'll do 2 giveaways today because I messed this one up. The wheel of names will be later, but everyone who typed in shrimp, don't worry, you'll still get your giveaway. Don't worry. You're gonna be like
Find a
scammed,
way.
scammed. Okay, there we go. Let me save that. Title is shrimp. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, helium. I apologize for your fingers.
Why you no work? Okay. Anyways, I'll do the wheel of names later, and it'll be posted the same way the last one was posted. Okay, let's get into Tri-Spikes. Later, we'll do the giveaway. We'll just do the traditional Chief patented number thing. I really was hoping this would work. Poor me. All right, let's get into Tri-Spikes. So this is a move that we saw last season quite a bit, a move that I expect to see more of going into this next season. Here's the thing with Tri-Spikes. It's only really good with this one build, in my opinion, and that's just Tri-Spikes and Scissor, Thorny Caterpillar, and what was the other move that it's used with?
Guitar.
Like a Kataro, or some people use Cerastes. So you can either use Kataro or Cerastes, depending on, what you like. Also, one of ones, thank you for the other gifted subs. I really appreciate it. 6 gifted subs. Really appreciate that. What are your thoughts on Tri-Spikes?
So I used a fair bit of Tri-Spikes. Is sort of more into my tournament pool recently. And the one that I use is a Tri-Spikes Incisor, Iguana, and a Lamb. It's also got another Aquapart, so it's a 45 speed reptile. And I've found most success with that because it just feels really rounded, and it's got quite a defined role on your team. So I compare that with a double discard Thorny Bug, double discard Gravelant Bug. I also use it with Terminator Reptile or this weird Gravelant, Scaly Spoon, Pinsir, Risky Beast Reptile that I have. And I think just generally, Tri-Spikes, especially in the higher ranks, people are very aware of it and the damage that it can deal. So they don't often cover it. There's very few players or don't often leave themselves open to being punished by Tri-Spikes. There are very few players that really, play that mind game with you. Like they might just put up shield, expecting you to try use fewer cards, less energy, just to get through and get the kill. And I think a lot of the value for Tri-Spikes is found in the mid game. And so I quite like having the the options and the roundedness with an aqua part to help you get through beasts or to snipe off bugs, and then also just the general shield on those sort of builds. Having a lot, being able to beef up and just snipe off one enemy in the mid game is really helpful. But that said, I do understand with the Inside's a Thorny combo that Elijah uses a lot, and I've seen him use a lot. It has the threat of being able to kill, or with a particular combo, I think it can kill any one Axie in the game unshielded. So that's its real strength. The issue for me with that build is in the mid game, you lack a lot of shield, so it's difficult to cover lots of barrages of attacks. So you tend to end up using the tri-specs more in the early game and not even getting value out of the shield just because you can't risk it. And I think that's one of the big strengths of the higher shield tri-spikes builds, is that they just beef up so much in the mid game you can't kill it, and it's then dealing the damage and offers you the mind games as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of other people like AK Wolf of Dam saying that there's a lot more flexibility with tri spikes potentially. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, because Wolf of Dam is saying tri spikes on Aqua, and I'm really under the impression that tri spikes is very build specific to this reptile. I mean, do you agree? Like, it's a lot more flexible than I think it is.
Yeah, so I think it is. It's definitely versatile. Whether it's optimal is a different question. I think Wolf of Dam runs it on an aqua that actually pairs very nicely, just because of the style of build he runs. He has a backliner that's got Nemo, Cactus, Chomp, Snail Shell, so it's quite similar to the Terminator reptiles or bugs in that they lack sort of damage unless they have that high damage move in the early game, so they're quite draw dependent. So you need something that has a lot of control. And so for his build specifically, the tri-spikes makes up for the lack of beast bug damage against tanks, because often the opponent will leave the tank undefended and he'll be able to get a kill for fewer cards. And on an aqua, it sort of works similarly to the higher shield reptiles, where you can get a lot of beef on that tri-spikes in the mid game. And with the aqua moves as well, they have got that damage that is capable of killing an aqua, even if you pop a bit of shield. I've tried to catch it before with like a Cuckoo +1, and they managed to still get the kill. Bugs and beasts can even go down to just a 3 card, a tri-spikes +2 aqua moves. So I think it's definitely viable. Whether I'd say it's optimal or not, I would probably have to play with it myself, because I played against it and I can see that it's definitely solid. But I think the reptile builds are definitely stronger, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting to. It'll be interesting to see if people start playing around with it. If there's anything more efficient, the reptile build seems really, really solid, and I guess that'll lead me into the next like combination that you see that tri spikes reptile in is. Let's go with Pincer Parasite. What are your thoughts about it in its current state? I mean, we're just seeing more and more of it. Also, do you expect it to be something kind of changed going into this next season?
Yeah, so I think Pincer could be the strongest, the most broken card in the game. I wouldn't call it the strongest card in the game, but it's definitely the most sort of overpowered in its own right. It's a unique card, and for a 0 cost, it deals 30 damage, gives you 10 shield, and has one of the strongest abilities in the game, which is to discard a card. So that triggering without having to be comboed, offering you that extra little bit of damage, and yeah, just without having to combo it, gives it that flexibility. You can just chip off a last stand with it and still get the discard. And then that's comboed often, as you've mentioned, with the Parasite. Parasite offers you some solid damage and shield. It's just a very rounded card. And I think that's definitely something that could be changed in the future. I wouldn't be opposed to it if it were to be changed. I think both could do with a bit less damage. Pincer more so, and then ideally, Pincer would have to be comboed to discard card, because often you just get that value for it being a 0 cost, knocking out last stands, as I mentioned, or just that extra little bit of follow up damage to after a tri-spikes reptile, let's say, because that's where you tend to pair it, leaves an Axie in last stand or with a little bit of health. That 30 damage on a bug stacks up to 40 when you're playing against a plant. So it's definitely not something to scoff at.
Yeah, I personally think that it has to change. It really needs to probably be chained. So I think that to discard, like say with Pinsir and Parasite, you need to change a chain with another bug move. That would be my recommendation going forward. However, that would be potentially horrific if it didn't work, because if it worked just as efficient, then it kind of almost incentivizes people to run double discard bug teams. And
Yeah, I
so,
think with that it would be so, you wouldn't be able to play it as a 1v1 build, and that tends to be where it shines. So I don't think we'd see them anywhere near as often unless, as you said, they go for the full double discard action. I don't think it would be able to play just as a single, because right now, like if you look at the teams, you've got maybe one trigger with a leaf bug on lots of the teams that have an Yam energy tank and then Tri Spikes reptile in the middle. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting change. I think it sort of remains to be seen because it is still fairly new, the discard bugs, but it is a really egregious tactic, and it's like sort of energy steals have been in the past where people felt helpless against it. Except energy steals you can play around. Discards, you can't necessarily do much about it if you don't have a cattail on your tank, or if you get to the 1v1, you're often just playing off draw anyway. And that's one of the sort of the tactics that I personally don't like as much, because it feels like you're more reliant on RNG and it's not exactly in your hands, and you can't control the outcome of a match as much as you can when you've got a full hand.
yeah, I mean, there's not that much skill behind it. I would say the skill behind it is maybe being able to, um, store cards and like knowing when to turtle up and investing energy on your axes. But I would say it's a pretty noob friendly build, and a lot of times you just get into this scenario where it's like, okay, we're going into the late game. Usually, when you're running discard bugs, you're usually behind most of the times going into like the mid game, but then you gain back traction um, going into the late game because they just can't handle that amount of shield cards, stuns, that kind of thing. And I mean, that's where you really see it shine is in these 1v2 scenarios, especially against like double aqua, against aqua bird, stuff like that. And it actually really um, struggles a lot against like beasts. I've noticed is like if you have a really strong
Yeah,
beast, it'll struggle versus that. Um, Elijah
it's
says he plays discard bugs and he admits it's broken.
yeah, I think the thing with as you said, it's very sort of low skill cap to get into, but to play it, properly, effectively, you do need to count cards properly. Know when to play the discards. But the issue with it right now, as we touched on, is the discards are just so inherently strong, and the axes have good damage that you don't necessarily even have to play perfectly all the time. You can get bailed out just because the discards are that strong. And I think another thing, as you mentioned with the beast, it's funny, ages ago when you first started using one of those discard bugs, that was my go-to strategy. I used to run that.
Yep.
I'm sure you remember the hare, confident, merry, risky
Mm-hmm.
because it just felt like the only thing that had a decent enough shot once you got to the 1v1 against that bug.
Yeah, and there was actually a time because I was one of the first people to start using that discard bug. I know there was a couple others, but
I
this was
think you were the first to use it in a tournament, because I remember having one, but I could never work out how to put it in a build.
yeah. I used it in the tournament, and I'm not sure if I was able to win that tournament. At the very least, I got really far, with that bug, and I actually thought it was bad because I thought there was a bug. I'm not sure if it was fixed or if it was an actual bug, but there was some weird thing going on. I don't know if you remember where we were unsure of if if the draw stack was actually working. And
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that was ever figured out, but I
I
remember.
think on that, I actually do. I worked out not the other day, but about a month ago or so. That the issue I think you would have found is that when you or first when an actually dies, you can discard dead cards. But the problem with that is that on the counter, it still shows that the card was discarded. Or you can have times where if your opponent only had 3 cards at the start of last turn, it can say they only had 2, and just things like that. Where if you have discarded a card that wasn't there, or you've discarded a dead axis card, the counter can be off just from that one turn, and then you'll never know about it until the late game.
Yeah. And so I think that was really throwing me off. And I remember going into the team tournament that YGG ended up, taking over AxiGG, the first one
We're
that
risky beasts.
Risky Beasts. Do you want to talk
It's
about that
the
one next, or
I,
I'm
I don't
confused?
want to talk. No, I just said we're risky beasts because it was the game where AK needed to draw the risky beast that just never came.
Oh, yeah, that was dirty. Yeah, that was really bad. But that was against my reptile, but he didn't draw it, and yeah, but that's kind of the issue I was talking about, is that we were unsure of how draw was working, and that was the tournament where I was almost like positive that draw was broken because of what AK experienced. What I tried running that discard bug during that tournament, and I lost almost every single game, and so I think that's where some of the confusion was, is that the draw pile that was being shown in game, didn't really match up with what was actually happening. Um, but yeah, I guess that'll cover the discard bug. Still a very, very strong build. Z quietly dumping an aqua during the stream. Oh, did an aqua sell? It's probably the crazy one that I sold. The one with early bird and blue moon, like the double range moves, maybe.
Interesting.
Yeah, I tried it. It sucks. But someone has zero breed. Someone else could try it out. But I tried it. Oh, the cuckoo sponge. Yeah, but
Well,
pro tip: the blue
equally
moon Aranda
questionable.
one with early bird, I tried, and it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. Anyways, let's go into the next one. So we just covered the discard parasite. I think the next step is Yam. It's been a card we have discussed probably for, I don't know, 10 seasons now, it seems. I think it's in a good spot, personally, assuming or considering the crit change that happened. I think if crit was as bad as it was, like a few seasons ago, then the Yam would actually, in my opinion, need a buff. But I like where it's at. I think it's pretty balanced. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's balanced, if not on the stronger end. Problems with sort of assessing Yam is that it's such a unique card that you can't really sort of put it against another card. Like with the other plant tails, you can assess them against their alternatives, like hot butt. You can look at carrot and see how shit carrot is, and just go hot butt's amazing. Or with Hatsune, you can do the same thing with potato leaf. They play similar roles, and you can see Hatsune is just a lot better. With Yam, you don't have anything that plays that same sort of role. So it's difficult to really to know what metric to assess it on. And I mean, if you look at use rates, let's say for an example, it's still either the most used tail. I think it's the most used plant tank tail in the top 100. And that's I don't think that shows that it's overpowered or anything. It just goes to show how popular the builds that it works well in are right now. So you've got the Thornies, the discard bugs, the double Yam builds, Tri Spikes just in general works very nicely with Yam. There's a lot of different things that Yam just plugs into well at the moment.
Yeah, for me, I like it a lot better because it doesn't feel nearly as punishing as it did before. I was just so afraid of Yam. I think, what was it? What the change was like 2 seasons ago, where it would just do so much damage,
Yeah.
where it really just dictated. It was just really unhealthy. It just really dictated how people felt about playing against into Yam, and also it was just overpowered. I mean, people were just going like backdoor Yam just for damage because of how much damage it was doing. And now it feels a lot more balanced to where it really supplements a team. Like, say for instance, the Reptile Thorny build that we're talking about with Tri Spikes. It's not primarily used as damage. I mean, you can punish people with it, but it's really used as a supplement to, as an activator for like Thorny. Also, if as you enter the late game, it really helps with the 1v1s in a lot of situations where you need that little bit of extra damage to get through. Um, Yam is going to be one of those moves that I think it's in a good spot. I think it's going to stay around, but I don't expect it to be changed going into this next season.
Yeah, and I think another massive part of that with the tri spikes is that often, if players are looking to catch a tri spikes, they'll play enough. So let's say they attack, they'll use enough damage from the back two axes and put up enough shield where it'll target their front tank, even if they play a couple of cards. And that's where the Yam comes in so handy with the Tri-Spikes, because then you can spread the poison across all of the axes, and then you don't even mind where your Tri-Spikes ends up going in the mid game, because everything's going to be ticking down and easier to kill.
Yep. Okay, I covered all of the ones that came to mind for me. Is there any other moves that come to mind for you that are really moves that have defined this last season, that are maybe moves that we're worried about going into next season, or moves that you think that could be changed? Oh, we didn't cover post fight.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think post fight is the one that would, of any move, be the one that's going to get a change, because people have been complaining about it for what, 2-3 seasons now, and it hasn't yet received a change. I think it narrowly missed out on the change 2 seasons ago just because it was quite a new card, so we couldn't really fully assess it. I think, well, I've always said the problem with post fight is that its value is outsized in the early game, where you can't. It's much more difficult to predict somebody's draw. You don't have as much energy to catch offenses. So around one post fight draw, in some cases, you can just clear through a tank, and just get that big step up in a game where, even though the 30% attack down, chill health down, sorry, is so massive in that late game, sometimes the value of having that 140 damage can just be enough to where you don't even have to worry about that. The game's already won in those first early stages. So I think with post fight, I would definitely like to see a damage nerf, whether that's to 120 damage and then maybe change the health to like 25%, or maybe even 110 damage and then you knock it down to only 20% health sort of reduced when you attack. I think either of those would be quite a healthy change, because then it limits just the massive amount of damage you get hit with in the early game. And by the time you get to the mid game, you can really start accounting for that damage. And then also, you can properly see the punish, or how you're punished by that health, because you get into the late game and you have to actually think, oh, do I want to spam a post fight here, or am I going to choose to hold on to it?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more people acquire these post fight birds. I mean, AK mentioned double post fight birds that we're seeing. I do think it's a pretty unhealthy amount of damage that it deals, and a lot of times it just creates so much tempo for the person playing post fight. If you don't have a way to counter it, like say Piranha, or like Turnip, Yam, it can just snowball really fast, and it's one of those moves that it just feels really bad to play against, and it's for the other player it's also very punishing. I don't know, it's just, for me, it's not a really well designed move.
Yeah, it just feels unhealthy.
Yeah, it just feels like, here, let's dump a shit ton of damage, but also you're going to take a ton of life or HP. I expect it to be changed. I hope they don't mess with it too much. I do think there's a happy kind of space for it to be. Maybe it could be one of those moves where it's, it takes 25% HP. Some implications with that, though, I want to ask you is, if it does take 25% HP, if you do 2 post fights, will it still allow you to activate things like Kingfisher and Hungry Bird?
Oh, that's actually good. I don't know, because it says beneath 50%, but I'm not sure whether that accounts for dead on as well. I guess in game you'd be able to check when the color goes from green to whatever next, I think orange on an axis, is when it sort of shows as 50%. And I can't remember if at half health my aqua had that. But yeah, that would be quite damaging for it, especially with the the fun little backdoor builds. You definitely limit that with it. But to be honest, I think for the most part, players aren't really even using it for that. Those backdoor triggers. A lot of the time, it's just for that raw damage, or the catching you off with a backdoor. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's something they consider, but I don't think that's. I think it would just be sort of trying to satisfy everybody that's been complaining about it for so long first, rather than worrying about that sort of ability.
Yeah. And why don't people play post fight like with Piranha? I mean, I know because you can go like post fight, and then you go first, right? Because your HP is lower. Like, even if you're going up against another bird. Is that
Yeah, I
correct?
think the problem with that is that you'd have to, so the problem with that is that you'd have to backdoor an Axie to set it up. And it's not like the normal Piranha running on Aqua where you can actually take a hit in the mid game. So often you can, naturally trigger that. With the post fight, it would be such a setup to get that trigger with the Piranha. I think the reason why the Hungry Bird and the Kingfisher are viable is because as soon as you're below that 50%, you can just immediately target one of those axes. So you just have to rattle off two post fights to set it up. With the Piranha, you'd have to, backdoor an axie, get below 50%, and then go for it. So it would just probably end up being one of those combos that you end up trying to wait on for too long, and then by the time you've got it, your axie's dead, or it's not optimal anymore.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Good point. All right, I think that covers post fight. Again, I think post fight is going to be one of those moves where I do expect it to change. If it doesn't change, then I think it could be pretty damaging going forward as other moves get potentially changed. So for me, it's a must change if you're going to have other changes to the moves we talked about. Because it's just if it doesn't change, then it's just going to start taking over because just the amount of damage it does. All right. Any other
Yep.
moves on the list for you? I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else that stands out as, again, a move that really defined last season that we are wondering if it's going to be kind of one of these moves that defines this next season or if it's something that's changed?
I guess we could go with the classic Sirius, which has
Okay.
still maintained its dominance as the mouth part. I would hope that next season we could see more zigzag or herbivore. Like maybe that's through a direct buff to one or both of those moves.
Yeah.
I think yesterday I was playing around binary assets. We've been having conversations about teams and whether you can still do well with like a decent or an all right team. So he sent me over the teams that he was working with, and I played and I was testing them. So he had this dusk that had zigzag, hotbar, beach, and a pumpkin. And I think the problem right now is just if you do get the value off, it is solid, but it's not quite to the point where an opponent would actually have to account for it. Like they're not going to purposely not attack into you just because you've got a zigzag. Maybe with a herbivore, that's slightly different. But then with herbivore, of course, you've got the worry that if you're not playing against the plant, you don't get any value for it whatsoever. So I would like to see those moves get more damage or more shield, so that it's something to actually take into account, and might on some teams challenge whether you should use a Sirius or not. Because at the moment, Sirius is just a staple. I don't
Yep.
think. I mean, the only sort of build I could see, or mouth I could see going over Sirius would be like I saw Cute Bunny the other day, like a full damage tank with Cute Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
So you see builds like Double Aqua where you just need the damage. Like that could be something that would be interesting. Might have to end up picking one up eventually. But yeah, I think even on a turnip build, which is funny, I use turnip and it has Sirius on there as well, because if you don't have the turnip, like if there's not a bird or if you don't draw the turnip, it can just double as a regular tank. And regular tanks always run Sirius just because it's such a helpful move in that early game.
Yeah, I mean, Sirius has just been around since the beginning of time, right? Since this new battle system, or this old battle system now as we go into the new one. Um, and it's defined it because it really dictates the tempo of the game. If you get double Sirius the first round, then
Ugh.
it's like the worst feeling ever. It's one of those moves where people have debating of like just wanting it completely redesigned because of just how energy is working inherently within the game. And it's one of those moves where you feel like you're at a disadvantage if you don't play it because of that tempo that it does offer, right? And the way
Yeah.
I've been able to kind of theory craft around it is if you're not running Sirius, you need to run something with Rice. You need at least one tempo gaining energy steal like a Rice, like a Sirius. So if you're gonna choose to run, a zigzag, which is not terrible. If you're gonna choose to run herbivore, which I think that they should change herbivore, and I would like to see them change herbivore to just be something crazy like 85, 85, like just something crazy where it's really, really punishing for the other player, or for like it's really rewarding for you, but also punishing for the other player if it gets through. I think like an 85 herbivore would just be sick because, you would either see like a ton of aqua tanks or you would just see like people running herbivore and having herbivore battles. I think it'd be cool. But
Yeah,
anyways,
I
yeah,
think that's the sort of change that we've been looking for a while, to start seeing dusks become tanks
yeah,
more, like front tanks more. Because with dust becoming viable front tanks, of course, they're not going to use Sirius because they're too fast to get full value out of it. So they need herbivore and or zigzag to be strong enough to where you can justify using it over using a Sirius. And then the cool part about having dust as viable tanks is then we might see people start to use Qatar on their front tanks as well, because you're going to be guaranteed a trigger against the dust, because dust, of course, they've got base speed of I think 39, so that you're always going to get that trigger on a slower plant. And I think part of what we've been talking about is anemone tanks and things like that. We sort of saw for a bit they came in, but the problem for those is just moves, as we already mentioned, like Piranha or Post Fight. That just, if you have one of them, you can just dominate an anemone tank off the bat, even if they have these heavy steels with a rice beast that people tend to play with it. And anemone is one of those ones where it's quite, for arena especially, it's quite risky to run, because there are some matchups like the SLP farm builds with the post fight bird and then double aquas with Nemo, where you can just straight up lose a match. Like, you can't do anything about it. Like, even if you play perfectly, there's nothing you can do about it, because the matchup is just so poor because you've got that anemone tank. And that's really what we've hoped, or I've hoped to be able to move away from for a while, where we can see those aquas and those dust tanks instead of the plants. And I think
hmm
we've had sort of
even reptiles
seasons
maybe.
where it started. Yeah, I mean, even reptiles could work. But just something other than the standard plant tank would be great. But the sort of the worry with that as well is that plants aren't really usable, or well, they are usable, but they aren't really desirable over a reptile or a dusk in any other spot. Especially dusk. Well, speed is a main thing there, because you want to be able to attack at least at the same time or similar times to beasts. Or if you can't attack ahead of a beast, you want to be able to use one slow and be able to go ahead of one. And then dusks have same speed or same health as a plant, and then just a shit ton more speed as well. So I think plants, the only worry for me would be that if we got to that point where there were other viable tanks, that plants would just sort of fade into obsolete. I forgot the word. Whatever, obsoleteness, something like that. Can't remember how to pronounce it.
Yeah, yeah, good points there. I think that covers it. I mean, we really talked about a lot of, the moves that we saw last season, but I like how we mentioned these kind of changes that we would like to see going into next season. And I think we've all really been really on the hook of when is next season going to be? One for one, and two, is there going to be a balance update? Because, we don't know when V2 is going to be. We realize that there are some inherent issues with the current meta, and we're looking for a fresh update. I mean, people, we want to breed, people. Give us some stuff. Give us some balance updates. I don't want to be breeding these freaking builds that are they're like bugs and stuff into, I don't know, whatever words you were going to use, like where they just don't exist anymore, where it's just bred into nothingness, where they're worth like 0.01. I want a new fresh meta. I want a huge balance update where we're seeing some of these moves that we're having issues with that we think are too overpowered to be either toned down a little bit, maybe even redesigned. But I would also like to see some of these moves that we're not seeing, like a lot of these, like moves you don't see, like Tadpole or something, where you're seeing like a huge balance update where we're just kind of shaking things up. So hopefully we get that, and I think that would really, especially with Ronin, I think that would really kind of put some freshness into this next season and into the meta.
Yeah, for
Obsoleteness,
sure.
yeah, obsoleteness,
Yeah, I just looked it up. Obsolescence. I have no clue how to. I've never seen that word written
obsolescence.
or spoken. I'll just say obscurity. That's easier.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into a giveaway. Let's do the first Axie giveaway. I've already sent Indies a number, and we're just gonna go right
Oh,
into it. So pick a number 1 through 100 now. All right. Who's gonna be?
oh
Who's gonna
my
be?
god. I haven't looked at my Twitter DMs since I made that tweet about the scholarship. Oh no, not looking at those again. Got like 30 within 2 or 3 days.
I
Jesus.
told you, man. I made the first comment. I was like, you're not ready for the amount of messages you're about to get.
I was prepared. I turned it off on Discord. I
You
made it so you had to be a friend to message me.
terrible, terrible scholarship
Why let my
manager.
mates have to bear the brunt of it? They love the DMs. Okay.
I'm
Still
sure they
haven't
do.
made it. This is.
I know it's the slow mode that does it. Come on, guys, you can get it. I haven't even seen anyone that's really close yet. That's the funny
Yeah,
thing.
not even in the right. Oh, that's somebody within the right sort of 10.
Yep. Up. No. Oh,
Oh.
getting closer, hotter.
Very close.
Oh,
there we
got
go.
it. Yo, Helium. Congrats, man. Helium is the winner.
Let me type that. Okay, you can stop spamming the numbers now.
Yeah, just go ahead and message me. I think you have me on Discord, so go ahead and message me your Ronin address. I'll send you an Axie. I haven't picked one out, so hopefully I can find a decent one for you. I'll just pick it out. Hopefully it's just not a terrible Axie that's a failed breed. Either way though, if it is a failed breed, it's gonna be a virgin. Who knows? V2's coming. Never know if it's gonna be
Helium
good.
loves those virgins.
I know, right? We got a little bit of time. Let's see. What's the time looking like here? Okay. Yeah, we got a little bit of time. Before we do the elite giveaway, if anyone has any questions for me, or now that Indes is back, so any questions specifically for him, we'll take a few questions. If not, then we'll get into the next giveaway. And really, I was really hoping for a balance update, or at least the announcement of the new season, to have discussions on that. So hopefully we'll get that by next week. Because if we do get a balance update, that'll be an awesome episode. And we could potentially even invite on another guest for that episode. Because when we have like these big balance updates or end of season discussions, I really like having more, minds to talk about, what's going on.
Sorry, I'm just counting the number of DMs I've got.
Yeah, first
for
question.
Odin's sake.
Yeah.
27.
27 DMs. That's rookie numbers. That's rookie numbers. Gabby and I at least get 100 a day. Nah, I'm kidding. I know Gabby gets a shit ton though.
Poor Gabby.
Yeah, he likes it. Also, the quick announcement: there's going to be a very special event next week. So keep an eye on the announcements.
Really? Sorry. It's just somebody's asked. Of all questions, you had to ask that here. Really? I have to go through again? Origin of in-game names.
I'll go really quick. My in-game name used to be Eisen. Specifically, it used to be Xavier Eisen. And it's a very, very nerdy name because Xavier Eisen is the combination of two X-Men. You guys can figure it out. And it kind of rang to me, Xavier Eisen. So I picked that, and then I changed it to Eisen. And then I realized, I'm not German. Like, why am I? I'm gonna pick Eisen. It doesn't really ring to me. And so I picked Z because I just thought Z had a ring to it. It was simple enough to remember, and I just went ahead with Z. Also, my name back in the day for when I was playing World of Warcraft, like semi-competitively, was GBs, and I would always use like Jeeb Z and like Z in my other name, so I just picked Z.
Fair enough. So yeah, mine comes from when I was about 10. I used to play Clash of Clans. And so being 10, I thought it was a great idea to call myself indestructible. Then I started playing Clash Royale semi-competitively, and then got into coaching professionally. And I, to say the least, I didn't exactly enjoy having that as my name. So a lot of people would just shorten it to Indes. So I just ended up going with that. I cut off the indestructible part, and that's pretty much what I've gone with since then on any game that I've played.
Indestructible. I'm gonna start calling you Indestructible.
Fuck's sake.
Be like, this is the arena with Z and Indestructible. That's awesome. What were we talking about before, though? We were talking about something.
You mentioned I think it was the Elite Night thing.
No,
Week.
so yeah, there's actually going to be 2 events next week. So keep your eye out on the Yield Guild Twitter. Let me link it for. It's just, I think, at Yield Guild. Hold on. Yeah, it's at Yield Guild. So I'll spell it for you guys here and link it in the chat. There's going to be a very special event this next week. I will let Gabby and obviously the Yield Guild Twitter be the one to officially announce what it is. But just keep your eye out for it. It's going to be a really cool event.
Sounds good.
Yep, Odin. He's got it there at Yield Guild.
Quick show.
And then we're going to be doing a special show. It's going to be called the Elite After Party. So we'll have a different overlay, probably discuss a few different things on that show. Again, hopefully we'll have a nice announcement to go over that day. We'll have kind of a live DJ set during the show, do some elite giveaways, and maybe have an elite announcement that day. And so that's going to be, we're going to start that show 1 hour earlier before our normal time. But I'll announce all that stuff on Twitter. So really 2 cool events going into next week. And again, hopefully we have some stuff to talk about next week as well.
Yep, fingers crossed.
Let's see. No really other questions. So Z,
When's
when
the
YGG?
chat?
So I've actually talked to Baranar and Enjoy, and we are going to have a YGG Axie chat, but the date is tentative. So we're kind of, YGG is waiting on a few things, but we are going to have a YGG on Axie chat, and there are going to be a lot of cool announcements and things we can disclose during that Axie chat. But again, it's really tentative based off of the development of some of the YGG stuff. But yeah, already in the works, already in the talks. I think with that being said, we'll go ahead and do the elite giveaway. I'll have you go ahead and DM me the number, Indies, and then you can be the one to announce announce when you want it to go.
All right. Okay. So I'll DM you on Twitter. Okay. So yeah, just start spamming numbers 1 to 100. It's 10 elite for reference.
You gotta write it. You gotta write.
Oh, sorry, I'm slow. Start now. There you go. Somebody nearly got it straight away. Oh, done. Somebody won already.
Oh, was it spell my name once? Or was it? Wow, right before Dave. Oh, literally Dave. Like almost at the same time. Poor Dave, man. All right, that's for what, 10 elite, right?
Yeah, 10 elite. So to claim that, just join the Discord. I'll put the link in here now, and I think tomorrow Chief will tip me it, and then I'll be able to tip it over to you. And so the way that works is just if you ever want to bring that out into your MetaMask wallet, you can go through the tip.cc bot and it withdraws, and it takes a little bit of that elite and uses it for the transaction fee. Yeah,
so if you store up enough elite, you can, I think, buy merchandise with it, and also there's some stuff that you can do in the elite Discord. Yep, Andy's is already on it.
Yep. Sweet. Roles similar to WoW. You can get the little reins and things like that as well.
Yeah, we'll discuss next week a lot about what elite really is and kind of their long-term goals. But as you can see, we're wearing elite gear, but it's more than just merchandise, and we'll get into that next week on kind of their overall vision of what they're kind of planning on doing it. But essentially, they're trying to link up crypto wallets and merchandise. So we'll get into that a little bit more next week. But yeah, other than that, that's really all we have to discuss today. And hopefully we have some more discussions that we can do next week with hopefully potentially an announcement of the next season and a balance update. And I think with that being said, unless you have anything else, Indes, we'll end the show there, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, nothing from me. Just thanks again, guys, for coming along, and enjoy the rest of your week or next week.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all your moms. Call your moms, tell her you love them or love her, and that's gonna be the show. Peace.